What's up? It's Filthy Casual coming at you with another video. This one is going to be a little bit different than the other ones just because I'm not going to be home tomorrow or the next day. So this video is being recorded today, which will be the yesterday or the day before. And it's just going to be a list. I figured since people are going to be watching my channel, maybe theoretically, I would put my list of the top 30 players in the NBA. This list isn't necessarily fully based on this past year, but it's also not necessarily projecting. So let me explain what I mean by that. Essentially, I am judging how good you are right now, which of course encapsulates last year, the playoffs, your performance, um, but also how valuable your play is relative to the league. So this means is that some younger players who are ascending, I'm not projecting how good they are going to be next year. However, if I have a choice between a young guy and an old guy, and sometimes I chose the young guy because I think they're a better player right now, even though the older guy historically has had better performances, and maybe we just haven't seen that same level in the past couple of years, whether it's due to injury or maybe they just had a down year. So that's that. I'm going to start off with a couple, very loud, couple of honorable mentions. Uh, those being DeJounte Murray, Brandon Ingram, Bradley Beal, LaMelo Ball, Zach LaVine, Jared Allen, Fred VanVleet, and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Those aren't in any particular order. I will say like one or two things quickly. One person on this list that I definitely didn't watch enough of is DeJounte Murray. So if he deserves to be on this list, this isn't a statement saying he isn't. I just didn't really watch a ton of him last year. I saw what I saw of him was definitely like he's definitely in this conversation and could easily take one of those bottom spots, but I just I just haven't watched enough of him to know personally. Um, Other than that, I've pretty much watched everyone. I guess I just didn't watch the Spurs. Um, but yeah, other than that, I think if there was one other player that would be put on this list, it would be Zach LaVine. I think he has the most varied and useful skill set out of everybody else here. Bradley Beal had a down year, and then pretty much everybody else either I haven't been shown something that made me want to put him on his list over anybody else, or somebody on the list just I had to put on because it just made sense to given their past year or 2 years. And yeah, but all these guys are obviously very close, hence the honorable mentions. So with that, we are moving on to the first part of the list, which is I grew Pascal Siakam, Chris Middleton, Draymond Green, and Rudy Gobert. So two things here. I grouped this into tiers. The first tier obviously being I can make that a little bit bigger. There we go. The first tier obviously being my boy Spicy P, Cash Money Chris, Draymond Green, and Rudy gets played off the floor in the playoffs. Gobert. That was way more of a dig than I meant it to be at Rudy Gobert. Rudy Gobert is a fantastic player. He's won 3 Defensive Player of the Years. He's multiple-time All-Star, All-NBA player. How is he not higher? Well, I don't know if I have to explain that. More so why he's lower or higher than some of the other people. Rudy Gobert is great, but he's got terrible hands. His offensive output is mid at best, not super useful. And while he doesn't deserve all the flack he gets for his playoff failures, I feel like he's had the opportunity to be the second best player or even the best player at times, but really second best player on a championship team when he was with the Jazz and they were a 1 seed and they were just like a 3 seed the year before. Like they had a couple of opportunities to break through and they didn't do it. He hasn't showed me he can be that player yet. These other players have, so he ends up lower. Draymond Green, I feel like is more versatile defender than him. He's shown he could be the third, fourth best player on a championship team multiple times. and he's a good passer. And while his shooting isn't what it used to be, if Draymond hits a three for me, which he sometimes does, at least a little bit more than Rudy Gobert, and provides me with similar defensive numbers, I'm going to value him a little bit higher. That being said, Chris Middleton was the second best player on a championship team, and he gives you good defense, he gives you good shooting, he's clutch, gives you all those things. I put Pascal Siakam above him just because I think Pascal Siakam has shown us all NBA stuff a couple of times, and I don't think you could say the same thing for Chris Middleton, even though Chris Middleton is very good. I think Pascal Siakam could be higher on this list. I think he had a really bad start of this year, and the inconsistency definitely makes me question him compared to some of the other people higher on this list. That being said, it's not the only one who I've got those questions about, but it just lowers his rating just a little bit. So the next one is a person in a tier all on his own. Uh, I don't think I explained the tiers. The tiers are basically just like anybody in these tiers can really be switched around in my mind. Um, and it doesn't really matter. I would say I personally would think Draymond Green is better than Rudy Gobert, but the rest of it doesn't, you know, even then, if you put Rudy Gobert like above Draymond Green, like I'm not gonna fight you on it. It's like, well, I value his passing, you value his rim protection. It's it is. This tier, this player's all on their own, and it is James Harden. Harden, my boy. Uh, well, Harden can be much higher on this list, and I have a little asterisk there because he can be either much higher or much lower next year, depending on his performance. Um, this I feel like is the bottom end of where he can be ranked at at this point, and I did it because I don't like James Harden, and I think he can be anywhere ranked up to around. Let me just take a quick peek at where I marked it. I think he could you could rank him anywhere as highly as 12th, and I wouldn't say you're wrong. Anyone above 12 at this point, I would just say, yeah, like you're crazy, crazy, crazy. I just decided I was going to put him here instead of at 12, because I just felt like the other players had shown me stuff that was better. I felt like he couldn't drive past anyone this year. His efficiency sucked. He demanded a trade out of Brooklyn, and I'm from New York, so F you. Yeah, I don't. I feel no remorse in this. He's played like trash for 2 years, and the only thing that's remained good is his passing. His shooting's gone to crap. His driving's gone to crap. His floater game sucks, and he doesn't defend. So you get the low end of the spectrum. Sorry, bro. Not sorry at all. All right. After that, we have our next group, which is headlined by Darius Garland, Andrew Wiggins, and Karl Anthony Towns. I feel like the most controversial person to put on this list is Andrew Wiggins, so I'm just going to start with him. Wiggins is a really good player, but he definitely suffers from. It's kind of like a tale of two players sometimes. It's like sometimes he's like hitting his stuff and being active on the boards, and that's what we saw in the NBA Finals. He was the second best player on a championship team. Like fantastic, fantastic, fantastic. I definitely feel like he should be. I feel like I'm putting him a little bit high here because I'm very hopeful that it's a sign of who he is to stay. And that version that we saw of him in the finals is who he is and not necessarily everything else. Uh, I feel like it's not really projecting to put him here because we saw him play like that at the highest level in a 7-game series. So I feel like it's not really projecting, but at the same time, it is. And I would say this is the one person on this list that I really feel like I might have overrated. Uh, just because I feel like if he gives us what we saw in the finals, then he deserves the spot. And if not, he's probably, a little bit closer towards the bottom. But hey, he won the ring this year, so I feel like I had to give it to him. Cat, meanwhile, hasn't done that same thing where he's shown he could be the second best player on a championship team. I said it before. For obviously he's a little bit younger, but he's got Anthony Edwards now. He's got Rudy Gobert. He's got D'Lo. He's got the team. He's got a squad. Gonna have a chance to prove it this year, and I feel like no remorse putting him at 26 when I feel there are other better players. One of them being Darius Garland, who, hey, I feel like is just flat out a better player than both of these players. I think his passing is fantastic, and I think if you'd ask almost 80% of the league or 90% of the league, hey, would you trade your point guard right now for Darius Garland? Would you? Almost everyone would say yes. Or not even your point guard, just your best player. Like, would you trade your best player for Darius Garland? A lot of people would say yes. Not 90% of the league in that case, but a lot of people, because his passing and his age and just like, while his age doesn't even come into this ranking, just like his actual quality of play, it's really fun to watch. Like, I loved watching the Cavs this past year. So I had to give him the nod. I feel like he could be much higher on this list next year just because I just think he's got it. But beyond that, moving up into the next tier, we've got Chris Paul, DeMar DeRozan, and Bam. So you can see I have DeMar listed as a point guard too. It's because he's really like the ball handlers for those both teams. He's the passer. That's kind of how that guy's operated since he was a Spur. And Zach LaVine's not doing all the passing and stuff. Like, that's DeMar's job. So no, he's not technically a point guard, but I marked him as one on this. That being said, I think he had a better year than Bam. Bam was obviously amazingly all defense, but DeMar was sinking game winners, and he was clutch AF, and he was leading the Bulls, and at one point they were the 1 seed, and and then there was injuries and stuff, but DeMar played his heart out, and I feel like I'm ranking him way too low on this list. But there are just so many good players in the league right now. It's just when I kept looking at some of the other players, I was like, man, if I had to take this player in a game right now, would I want DeMar DeRozan or this guy? And I just kept picking the other guy, and this is where he ended up. And I still feel like I'm probably screwing it up somehow, but that he's there because he's there. I don't feel good about it, but it is. The other one I've got here is Chris Paul. Obviously, they won 64 games, but man, that was a wipeout in the conference semifinals. Yeah, it was just brutal. Second round out for a team that was really favored by a lot of people to win the title. And hey, maybe if they beat the Mavs, they matched up pretty all right against the Warriors. DeAndre Ayton was a mismatch nightmare for them, at least during the regular season. Obviously, we know more than a regular season, but hey, you lose all right to have these what ifs when you get blown out by 70,000 points in game 7. So Chris Paul's a fantastic player. He's one of the best passers in the league. He's brilliant, clutch in all these wonderful other things, but just plays great defense. Granted, he's kind of not as good as it used to be, but he still plays great defense. But yeah, Chris Paul I couldn't put him any higher than this after the collapse they had. I just couldn't, which sucks because he was all NBA second team, deservingly so. I think he had a good regular season, and I guess this is maybe a little bit of I don't necessarily know if I would have said overcorrection because I still feel there are other players who are better than him, but his impact goes beyond the stat sheet. So when the stat sheet no longer so when the other stuff beyond the stat sheet no longer shows up, then his value and his stats definitely look a little bit more stark, especially when he underperforms. Okay, moving on. Next on the list, we have 18 through 20, Anthony Edwards, Donovan Mitchell, Jaylen Brown. Jaylen Brown was the best player for the Celtics in these finals. I won't say he was the best player on the team, but he definitely played the best. And I kind of just couldn't put him above Donovan Mitchell just because I feel like Donovan Mitchell's been way higher scoring ceiling, and Jaylen Brown's defense and the Celtics defense, while historically great, I I felt his part in it wasn't anywhere near the largest on that team. So while he's a solid defender and Donovan Mitchell is a lackluster one, I feel Donovan Mitchell's scoring potential in playoff series, as well as his ball handling, which I would say is better, much better than Jaylen Brown's. I would just say that he is just better as a player. I'd rather have him on my team. If I think he could do what Jaylen Brown did in these finals and perform better, and I just think that they're different levels of players. That's kind of just what that all boils down to. Anthony Edwards, it's the same exact thing with Donovan Mitchell. I think Anthony Edwards is just better than Donovan Mitchell. I think Donovan Mitchell's a better scorer, but I think Anthony Edwards, I think he's just going to be one of, he's not even that he's going to be one of those dudes. It's like he is him like right now. Like I think if you, like it didn't work out in this playoffs, but man, like it felt like it was going to for a while there. And you can just see it. And watching him in the regular season with his shooting and his driving, and he just looks so freaking huge. Man, Anthony Edwards, man, this guy's this guy's an all timer. I think. Like in the future, this might be too low for him. This is just I couldn't put him above a couple of people above him. Like I said, all these tiers. If you wanted to switch them around, I felt like these were my appropriate groupings for them. But here we have 15 through 17, where we have Zion right above Anthony Edwards. We've got Trey Lillard, Dame Lillard, and Trey Lillard, Dame Lillard and Trey Young. So Zion, I have a power forward at 17, just because. I mean, well, first of all, everybody knows he's freaking amazing, brilliant, and this list does assume health. However, I just don't know if we've seen him in a playoff series yet. So we haven't seen how people will scheme for him, how his skills will translate. Will his lack of shooting and mid range be a problem? Will his passing lanes get clogged up and he ends up turning the ball over a lot? Like all these other things that I want to see about him that I just haven't been able to see it. So he hasn't proven it to me in any kind of way. I have a sneaking suspicion we're going to get into the playoffs and he's just going to bully his way to the basket and dunk on motherfuckers. But who knows? So, and I didn't want to project, but I felt like Zion was deservingly this high on the list, if not. And you could argue him, obviously, as I said, higher than both of these players. That being said, I have Dame Lillard above him. Dame has shown consistent, clutch shots. He's got some of the craziest playoff performances I've ever seen. Made like what, like 11 threes, 12 threes in a playoff game. That game was just ridiculous. That dude was throwing up everything. It was just going in, shot after shot. It was just like, how do you stop this? It's like, and it was like nobody on his team could do anything for the rest of the game, and he just ended up losing. And it's like, man, how does this guy, like, he needs some help, and then he stunk it up in like two of the next games. But yeah, it's the way of the world, and I think the one reason I value Trey over him is just because Trey's a better passer and a better ball handler, and they're both total negatives on defense. They're both complete off-ball watcher standards. They don't cut, but Trey at least is a good passer and creates more shots for his teammates than Dame does. Not that Dame's bad at it, just Trey's really good at it. So that's how that goes for me. Moving on to 12 through 14, we have Paul George, Jason Tatum, and Devin Booker in that order. So this one was tough. I put Jason Tatum over Devin Booker, just because I think Jason Tatum's ceiling is higher and he plays better defense than Devin Booker does. And also, he made it to the finals this past year. Granted, Booker made it to the finals last year. They both won the same amount of games. Tatum stunk it up in the finals. Devin Booker also kind of stunk it up in the finals. So, I feel like they're very much same. They're very neck and neck. If you want to put one over the other, I think if anything, people would be arguing that Jason Tatum should be higher on this list. I think if he had won the finals and had played well in the finals, it would have definitely helped. But I mean, he has potential. I mean, he's right on the cusp. Obviously, I have him at 13. I think he's close-ish to top 10. I think he's just. I mean, he had an opportunity to grab it and he didn't. And Paul George, I just feel is a little bit more reliable as a second option. And I just like the way he attacks more. Because I feel like Paul George will attack the rim more. And Jason Tatum will just decide not to and just chuck up a bunch of threes and hard shots that he can definitely make. Granted, the Warriors got a lot of credit, get a lot of credit, rightfully so, for that in this past finals. But he also does it in like round one, just because he's, or not round one, round two, because he's just like, why are you doing it? It's not because their defense is that great. It's just you don't want to, and it makes no sense. And I feel like Paul George does that. So that's that argument. I think Jason Tatum will be better than Paul George, and he's close to being a better player than him now. I just rather have Paul George in like a game, not like on my team, but just like in a pure like if I'm picking sides, I think Paul George would be a more consistent asset for me. Jason Tatum might have a, well, yeah, that's just how I feel about it. All right, 9 through 11. So this is the start of the top 10, and well, I'll get to it. So I've got Ja Morant at 11, Anthony Davis at 10, Jimmy Butler at 9. So as you can see, Anthony Davis has a star next to his name, because I'm either severely underrating or overrating Anthony Davis, and I'm conflicted on which it is. So I have Ja at 11. Obviously, he's a fantastic player. Saw what he did in the playoffs until he got injured. He was crushing teams. They were the second best team in the league. Obviously, he had a great team around him, but he averaged 27, most improved player, yada, yada. Anthony Davis, obviously, he's got the argument of, oh, he's already won a championship. He was the second best player on that team. He, although it was really very, very close, but LeBron was definitely better. But he's like one of the PER leaders in the NBA for like every year he's actually played. And when he's healthy, he's a fantastic defender, excellent shooter. But he's also just like kind of really inconsistent, I feel. Like I feel like every time I see him have a good game or a couple of good games, he's just got a really stinky one. Like every time. And and maybe it's because of injury and he's like out of rhythm all the time, but it's hard when that's the version that you're seeing to say, oh, but what about the version we saw 4 years ago and 5 years ago? What about when he was in Pelicans? Oh, he didn't have a good team, but he was playing great. It's like it's hard to get over that, to put him higher than especially someone like Jimmy Butler, who was just the best player in the playoffs. He had the best season of the playoffs by far. Like, and it wasn't close. Like he had two bad games, uh, because he was dealing with some kind of injury, and but like every other game, he was fantastic and like leading the playoffs and everything. Anthony Davis got a star next to his name because he's either as high as like 7, maybe 6, probably not. But I could be underrating him. or I'm severely overrating him and he deserves to be like, oh boy, maybe as low as like 19 after Anthony Edwards. I mean, there's an argument to be had for a lot of these players to be over him. And I think for Anthony Davis, it's just a little bit of a guessing game lately. But yeah, I'm assuming health, so I feel like I have to at least give him some credit. You know? So Anthony Davis, Dunzo going into 7-8. Here are two players who are in categories of their own. I feel like they are both after these three, or well, higher up than these three, but also not as movable, where I feel they're both separate from each other. So we have Kawhi at number 8 and LeBron at number 7. So Kawhi, we haven't seen play basketball in like freaking years. However, he's a fantastic player. I feel he's definitely better than Jimmy Butler. If I had to take a healthy Kawhi or a healthy Jimmy Butler, I'd take Kawhi any day. He's a better defender. I think he's a better scorer. I think he does so much around the court. And I think the one thing Jimmy has on him is free throw baiting, which can be extremely useful. But Kawhi hit that shot though. So I have Kawhi at 8. I think LeBron is at 7. And I think it's a good spot to put him just because he was still one of the league's leading scorers. He played a ton of minutes at center, which might have artificially inflated that, but like he's still just like ranking out all-time seasons at like age 10,000. And it's hard to hate. It's hard to hate. And I don't think he's better than anybody above him on this list. I think you can't put him above anybody else on in front of him on this list at this point. However, I feel like he's also so clearly a top player in the league still that you can't not keep him in the top 10, and putting him at 7 is tough. It's tough. Tough. But yeah, and I just think he's better than Kawhi. And I think Kawhi, and I think it's just because of his passing, honestly. Kawhi's just like not like he's a good passer, but Braun, man, come on. So moving next, we have 5, 6. We've got Embiid and Durant. So I think I probably have to explain why I have Durant 5 rather than Embiid 6. I think Embiid's MVP level player. He didn't win it this year, but I think on any given year from last year to I think maybe the next 2 or 3 years he can win an MVP. And it's he's definitely should be a betting favorite because it's all just a matter of how the chips fall. But he's going to be in those talks. And he's just super dominant. He can shoot from outside. He had a game-winning 3 in the playoffs, man. Like, come on, who does that as a center? He's he's just wild. KD, I feel like KD makes sense when you think about the people who I have in front of him. Kevin Durant is a great scorer, great ball handler, great shooter, great all-around Twitter troll. However, he does not pass well. And that's really what got exposed during the Celtics series. He's not a great passer. He's an okay passer. He's a good passer. He can make some stuff, but it takes him a second to realize which pass he should be doing. And he gets swarmed in that time. And it showed up against a great defensive team like the Celtics, where, he just couldn't, part of it's like, who's he passing to, right? But he still had Kyrie, man. Like, it wasn't like he had to do everything himself, and he just got his butt handed to him. KD, I feel like you can argue him maybe one spot higher. Maybe. But beyond that, I don't see him being higher than the 4th best player. And I think that's just the way it is. I love me some KD, but he's the 5th best player in the league. So I put 1 through 4 in one big category. So no big reveal here. Remember, I had commented on it makes sense that Durant is 5 when you see 1 through 4. These are those 4. At 4, Luka Doncic. 3, Nikola Jokic. 2, Giannis Antetokounmpo. And 1, Stephen Curry. So like I said, you can put these in any order you want, and I'm not necessarily going to say you're wrong. I feel like, and that's really why I put Luka above KD, because I felt like if somebody told me, hey, Luka's the best player in the world right now, I would have less of a problem or less of an issue with saying, yeah, like I could see that, than with Kevin Durant. And it's mainly because of passing. Every single one of the players on this top 4 is a better passer than Kevin Durant. Every single one of them is a great passer. Luka, generationally great passer. Jokic, generationally great passer. Giannis didn't start out as a good passer, really like made a big change in his passing ability, and it showed. That's why they won the title. I mean, Chris Middleton obviously needed to be fantastic, and Drew Holiday obviously needed to be fantastic, but Giannis's kick-out passes are so much better than Kevin Durant's kick-out passes. And because of the way he plays and because of the defense he brings. And then Curry, obviously, yeah, Curry, point guard, best point guard in the league, best passer. Uh, Not best passer in the league, but he was the best passer, connect a team on a championship team. He's a better passer than Draymond. I know Draymond's a great passer, but Curry's a better passer, and he's the ball handler. That matters. But we'll get into that after. I just had to explain why KD was 5. I felt, um, but yeah, like I said, Luka, I felt was is that next guy who's like there, made the conference finals this year. Obviously, he's like a walking 28-point triple double. So it's like, okay, if you're gonna average 28, 7 and 7, or 27, 8, 9, it's like, all right, yeah, go nuts. You're the best player. It's kind of like watching LeBron, like a white, unathletic, but with much better shooting and much better handles than LeBron. It's the underrated thing about Luka. He's got great handle. Um, Jokic obviously is the back-to-back MVP. I think the only reason he's 3 instead of higher is because he's yet to find the playoff success. Obviously, the 2-3-1 lead comebacks were brilliant, but a lot of those were, you know, Jamal Murray, Michael Porter Jr. Obviously, he was a big part of them too. And I'm not saying Jokic doesn't deserve credit for those, but he is yet to make it to the finals at this point. He's going to have a great shot at it this year. They're a great team. I think he's one of the 3 best players in the league. At this point, ranking them really is kind of all a matter of preference. If somebody says, hey, Jokic is the best player in the league, I'm going to say, cool. I think Curry and Giannis are better, but, Jokic is great too. So the last, really for me, the struggle was putting Giannis and Curry 1 and 2. I feel like those 2 are really, like, if you're putting Giannis 1, like Jokic, I'm like, oh, like, yeah, I think Jokic is cool. Like, if you're putting Giannis 1, I'm just like, yeah, makes sense. I think Giannis is a great passer. I think he's a great scorer. I think he's a great defender. His shooting is all right. It's just he does so many good things. And I think just the one reason I give it to Curry is that he just, it just feels different. He just, oh, guy needs to stop messaging me. But either way, I just feel like Curry has done stuff in the finals repeatedly, and that's that. All right, that's my list. Obviously, give me what you think is right, what you think is wrong. I'm gonna clip this up, pop in on the YouTube channel, and thank you for watching.